guys, I wanted to do one on Operation Mockingbird according to Wikipedia. So, this is what they're going to have a severe bias against this. So, Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird is an alleged large-scale program of the United States Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, that began in the early 1950s and attempted to manipulate news media for propaganda purposes. It funded student and cultural organisations and magazines as front organisations. According to writer Deborah Davis, Operation Mockingbird recruited leading American journalists into a propaganda network and oversaw the operations of front groups. CIA support of front groups was exposed after a 1967 Ramparts magazine article that reported the National Student Association received funding from the CIA. In the 1970s, congressional investigations and reports also revealed agency connections with journalists and civic groups. None of these reports, however, mentions by name an Operation Mockingbird coordinating or supporting these activities. Okay, well, if it's alleged and, being picky, it might not be called Operation Mockingbird, or they're trying to deflect from that. But if it's alleged, why was there a congressional investigation and reports that revealed connections, agency connections? Okay. Project Mockingbird is mentioned in a CIA Family Jewels report compiled in the mid-1970s according to the declassified version of the report released in 2007. Project Mockingbird involved the wiretapping of two American journalists for several months in the early 1960s. In the early years of the Cold War, efforts were made by governments of the Soviet Union and the United States to use media companies to influence public opinion internationally. In a 1977 Rolling Stone magazine article, The CIA and the Media, reporter Carl Bernstein wrote that by 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles oversaw the media network, which had major influence over 25 newspapers and wire agencies. Its usual modus operandi was to place reports developed from CIA-provided intelligence with cooperating or unwitting reporters. Those reports would be repeated or cited by the recipient reporters and would then in turn be cited throughout the media wire services. These networks were run by people with well-known liberal but pro-American big business and anti-Soviet views, such as William S. Paley, Henry Luce, Time and Life, Arthur Hayes Sulzberger, New York Times, Alfred Friendly, managing editor of the Washington Post, Jerry O'Leary, the Washington Star, Hal Hendricks, Miami News, Barry Bingham Sr., Louisville Courier-Journal, James S. Copley News Services, and Joseph Harrison, the Christian Science Monitor. Reporter Deborah Davis claimed in her 1979 biography of Katharine Graham, the owner of the Washington Post, Catherine the Great, that the CIA ran an Operation Mockingbird during this time. Davis claimed that the International Organization of Journalists was created as a Communist Front organizations and receiving money from Moscow and controlled reporters on every major newspaper in Europe, disseminating stories that promoted the communist cause. Davis claimed that Frank Wisner, director of the Office of Policy Coordination, a covert operations unit created in 1948 by the United States National Security Council, had created Operation Mockingbird in response to the International Organization of Journalists, recruiting Phil Graham from the Washington Post to run the project within the industry. According to Davis, by the early 1950s, Wisner owned respected members of the New York Times, Newsweek, CBS, and other communication vehicles. Davis claims that after Cord Meyer joined the CIA in 1951, he became Operation Mockingbird's principal operative. Congressional investigations. After the Watergate scandal in 1972 to 1974, the US Congress became concerned over possible presidential abuse of the CIA. This concern reached its height when reporter Seymour Hersh published an expose of CIA domestic surveillance in 1975. Congress authorized a series of congressional investigations into agency activities from 1975 to 1976. A wide range of CIA operations were examined in these investigations, including CIA ties with journalists and numerous private voluntary organizations. The most extensive discussion of CIA relations with news media from these investigations is in the Church Committee's final report published in 1976. The report covered CIA ties with both foreign and domestic news media. For foreign news media, the report concluded that the CIA currently maintains a network of several hundred foreign individuals around the world who provide intelligence for the CIA and at times attempt to influence opinion through the use of covert propaganda. These individuals provide the CIA with direct access to a large number of newspapers and periodicals, scores of press services and news agencies, radio and television stations, commercial book publishers, and other foreign media outlets. For domestic media, the report states approximately 50 of the agency assets are individual American journalists or employees of U.S. media organizations. Of these, fewer than half are accredited by U.S. media organizations. The remaining individuals are non-accredited freelance contributors and media representatives abroad. More than a dozen United States news organizations and commercial publishing houses formerly provided cover for CIA agents abroad. A few of these organizations were unaware that they provided this cover. CIA response. Prior to the release of the Church report, the CIA had already begun restricting the use of its journalists. According to the report, former CIA Director William Colby informed the committee that in 1973 he had issued instructions that, as a general policy, the agency will not make any clandestine use of staff employees of U.S. publications which have a substantial impact or influence on public opinion. He issued instructions, did he? In February 1976, Director George H.W. Bush announced an even more restrictive policy. Effective immediately, CIA will not enter into any paid or contractual relationship with any full-time or part-time news correspondent accredited by any U.S. newspaper service, periodical, radio, television network, or station. Could be, but I'm calling bull. You know what? By the time the Church Committee report was completed, all CIA contacts with accredited journalists had been dropped. The committee noted, however, that accredited correspondent meant the ban was limited to individuals formally authorized by contract or issuance of press credentials to represent themselves as correspondents, and that non-contract workers who did not receive press credentials, such as stringers or freelancers, were not included. Project Mockingbird. In 2007, a CIA report was declassified that is titled The Family Jewels. Compiled by the CIA in 1973, it refers to a Project Mockingbird and describes a wiretap of journalists. The report was compiled at the request of then CIA Director James R. Schlesinger. According to the report, Project Mockingbird, a telephone intercept activity, was conducted between 12th of March 1963 and 15th June 1963 and targeted two Washington-based newsmen who at the time had been publishing news articles based on and frequently quoting classified materials of this agency and others, including top secret and special intelligence. Yeah, well, they haven't stopped, guys. The wiretap was authorized by CIA Director John A. McCone in coordination with Attorney General Mr. Robert Kennedy. The Secretary of Defense, Mr. Robert McNamara, and the Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, General Joseph Carroll. An internal CIA biography of McCone by CIA Chief Historian David Robarge, made public under an FOI request, identified the two reporters as Robert S. Allen and Paul Scott. Their syndicated column, the Allen Scott Report, appeared in as many as 300 papers at the height of its popularity. And guys, I'm just going to say to you, this has not stopped. In fact, this has gotten worse. This has gotten worse. And this would be a very, very censored subject. And this, on Wikipedia, they wouldn't tell you much at all. goes a lot further than this. And they influence everything we see, including Hollywood. It's gone that far. It goes that far. It's in everything. And this goes with the video of propaganda that I made. So there you go, guys. That is Operation or Project Mockingbird by Wikipedia's version of it. And even that is just quite surprising that they say that much. So yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, guys, okay, I'll do another one pretty soon on MK Ultra, and then after that we'll try and dig a bit further into these and see what we can come up with. Okay, guys, bye.